Hello everyone, it's me again, and I'm here with another video, which will be about a new series called What Could Have Been, and today I'm gonna go over my what if DC sold the rights to the character series. More specifically, what could have been. But let's begin, shall we? I think it makes sense to start off with part one. When I decided to do part one, I knew part one had to be the X-Men. For a time I thought of the JSA as the X-Men equivalent, but only reason why I went with the Teen Titans is because I felt like the Teen Titans as the X-Men equivalent made more sense. Now, not a lot have changed, not a lot has changed, but however, I intended for Narc to be the equivalent of Beast, but I dropped him because I felt like he and Cole were inseparable. And looking back, I wish I didn't include Aqualad, more specifically the Garth version, and kept Narc. And initially, I had trouble thinking of who the Deadpool counterpart would be. I initially thought Red Hood, but Sony would have had the rights to Jason Todd, not Fox. If you remember correctly, in part two, I made the Robin of the Raimi Batman trilogy Jason Todd. But alas, that's why I ended up with Deathstroke. Though part of me wishes I would have gone with Vigilante instead. I didn't go with Vigilante because at that time, I didn't know he was once a villain of the Teen Titans. Which I thought was interesting. I didn't think about him as a villain of the Teen Titans. I never did. And when it came to the initial plot idea I had for Teen Titans 3, it was meant to be more or less the same we ended up getting, except a new version of the Brotherhood would have acted as the villains. Maybe not led by the Brain, maybe Mala this time. I don't know. I really don't know. But part one didn't stray too much from the original vision. Oh, and I also had considered Nightwing to be the Wolverine equivalent in terms of a film trilogy. Like, the first film would have been set before Teen Titans, which would have, of course, seen how Dick was once Batman's sidekick. Yes, Batman would have been confirmed to be Dick's mentor in this universe. And then he would face against Deathstroke, who obviously would have been the villain. And then the second film would have seen him face someone like Blockbuster, with Brutel as a secondary villain, and Tara still would have appeared. Since I intended to do the Dick and Tara storyline, but considering I didn't think about fully ahead back then, it had to be dropped in a sense. But as for the third one, it would have still seen Brother Blood as the villain. And of course, the equivalent to X-23 would have been Nightstar, who would have been Dick and Starfire's daughter, and the mystery surrounding the mother storyline would have been dropped entirely had I gone with Nightwing as Wolverine. But again, I think that's all for part one, honestly. And now we can move on to part two. Alright, part two. What if Sony made a Batman movie? No, initially I had intended to keep Heath Ledger as Joker, but I dropped it because I'm not sure if Ledger would have been the right age for Joker at that point in time. But I forgot he was born before 1979, so I really forgot, honestly. Now, initially, I had intent for Dick Grayson to be the Robin of the Raimi films and not Jason Todd, but because of rights issues at that point in time, it would have made sense to drop Dick and just skip him in favor of Jason. And if I had done things differently with part two, that's one change I would have made. And initially, for the Clayface counterpart, it was meant to be two characters. I mean, Sandman. Clayface was still in it, but however, Deadshot was meant to be in Batman 3, and his storyline was meant to be more similar to Sandman of trying to find a cure for his daughter. As for who I would have gone for Deadshot, I'd probably say either Johnny Depp or Josh Stewart. I'm not sure who I would have gone for in the end. Also, for a time, I had debate on either Superman or Flash to be part two. Superman nearly came close. Flash was too hard, but Superman nearly came close. Superman was the closest until Batman beat him, and I think I went with Batman in the end. I think going with him in the end made perfect sense. As for the web films, not really a lot was too different. Other than I had intended for Man-Bat to be like the only villain in Cape Crusader 1 and Hugo Strange to be more like a secondary villain. And initially, Cape Crusader 2 was meant to be the introduction of Hush. Two-Face wasn't going to be in it initially. And one thing I regret nowadays is having Electrocutioner be like the counterpart of Electro. Because who I wish I would have gone for as the Electro equivalent, I probably would have gone for Poison Ivy maybe, or Forcephus. I'm not really 100% sure who I would have gone for instead of Electrocutioner, because looking back, Electrocutioner does fit Shocker better. I regret that choice a lot now. I really do. I really, really do. And that's a part three. For a while, I had considered the Doom Patrol to be the Fantastic Four equivalent because they are more alike, and looking back, I wish I would have gone for the Doom Patrol as the Fantastic Four equivalent. Now, for a while, I had considered that to be the JSA, but the Legion of Superheroes made more sense as they were some of the more fantastical teams similar to the Fantastic Four. Now, initially, Brainiac 5 was going to be a part of the Storyverse lineup until he was dropped, mainly because of rights issues with Superman. Now, initially, I didn't consider Galactus, his counterpart, to be Starro. Initially, I thought of it being Emprix, the villain that was in the final season of the animated Legion of Superheroes series. I dropped Imperiex in favor of Starro because I didn't know of his character at that point in time. And at another point, I nearly considered it to be the Fatal Five for the villains of the sequel. But then they were dropped. But overall, nothing much changed, honestly, from part 3. I pretty much got everything down. And now to the main universe. Phase 1. Initially, I didn't consider Superman to be the equivalent of Iron Man. I had other characters. For a time, I debated on characters like Green Arrow and Flash, as well as Blue Beetle. But I went with Superman in the end because I felt like, unlike Marvel, which they had to pull off the ultimate risk of starting their cinematic universe with one of their lesser known characters, DC would have wanted to start their cinematic universe off with one of their most popular, Superman. And I feel like going with Superman was the right choice. But if I had gone with Flash as the Iron Man equivalent, the Flash of the trilogy obviously would have been Barry Allen, and Wally West would have became Flash after Final Crisis. Like, he would have became the new Flash after Barry's sacrifice in Final Crisis. And if I had gone with Blue Beetle, the Blue Beetle of the trilogy would have been Ted Kord, as Jaime Reyes was just new. So he might have filled in the counterpart to either Rhodes or Harley Keener. But if he had gone the Harley Keener route, if I had done that with Harley Keener, him as the Harley Keener equivalent, Ted Kord would sacrifice himself in Final Crisis to defeat Darkseid, and Jaime becomes the new Blue Beetle going forward. But in the end, I felt like Superman was the right choice. Now, initially, I hadn't considered Wonder Woman for, like, the Thor counterpart. Initially, I consider that to be Green Lantern. And Flash was meant to be the Hulk counterpart, whereas Wonder Woman was going to be held off for the Thor counterpart. No, I mean Black Panther, not Aquaman. Wonder Woman was meant to be held off in favor of Black Panther, whereas Superman was going to be for Captain America, but all of that fell through. As for Phase 2, not really a lot changed, but had I gone with the Doom Patrol for the Fantastic Four equivalent, the Legion of Superheroes would have filled in for the Guardians of the Galaxy and not the JSA. Also, I had intended for Savitar to be the villain of the second Flash movie, and at another point I had considered to be Dr. Alchemy. And Jay Garrick, if I remember correctly, was going to be a member of the JSA in the first movie, but I dropped him in the end. And when I was in the development process of Justice League 2, I initially considered the film being called Justice League Panic in the Sky. Yes, I had intended to go for the Panic in the Sky storyline for the second Justice League film, and Maxima would have been introduced. But then I dropped the Panic in the Sky storyline after I did what I did with Brainiac and Superman 3. And now to Phase 3. Again, not really a lot changed. Other than Shazam was going to be the equivalent to Captain Marvel. And at another point, the Doctor Fate equivalent. I mean, Doctor Strange. But then when I dropped Shazam, that led to Supergirl replacing him. And for a while, I had considered Zatanna as the equivalent of Doctor Strange, but I dropped it because I felt like she fit Scarlet Witch better. But if you ask me what happens after Phase 3, like, the Crisis Saga, Phase 4, I feel like would have to begin with a Zatanna show. There would be no equivalent to Falcon the Winter Soldier unless if it's a show about Jay Garrick's Flash, maybe. As for the equivalent of Loki, I would have it be a show about Erzria and showing what she's been up to after the second Wonder Woman movie and before the third one. The Black Widow equivalent, I maybe it would have been Black Canary. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know really. Shang-Chi would have been Blue Beetle. What if it would have been Elseworlds? New Gods would be Eternals. Hawkeye, I don't think I would have made it, Green Arrow since he already filled in for Ant-Man. Unless if it was a Green Arrow prequel show, maybe. Or maybe a show about someone like Red Arrow. I don't know. I might have gone for it to be a prequel show about Green Arrow, like showing more of his history before the first Justice League film. I already talked about Batman 3, so no introduction. Constantine would have been Moon Knight. Doctor Fate 2 would be Doctor Fate in the crisis of multiple Earths. I'm not sure what I would have gone for the Miss Marvel equivalent. Maybe Power Girl. Wonder Woman 4 would be Gods Immortals. As for She-Hulk, Star Sapphire, Aquaman, War for Atlantis, or something like that for the second Aquaman film. And of course, the JSA holiday special would be the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special equivalent. Phase 5, Green Arrow, Black Canary, and Speedy, or better yet, Green Arrow, Black Canary, and Red Arrow. What else? Oh, yeah. JSA 3, Invasion, as well as Ares Season 2, which would then lead into the events of the third Wonder Woman movie. Elseworld Season 2, and of course a Supergirl 2, which would probably adapt the Woman of Tomorrow storyline like the newest film. Or, as I would call it, Supergirl and Power Girl. 2024 was like a weird year for the MCU because of the writer's strike. So, Huntress for Echo, as for Deadpool and Wolverine, Deathstroke and Beast Boy, which would of course be non-canon or loosely canon because the canonicity of Deadpool and Wolverine in the MCU is insane if you ask me. It really is insane. As for Elseworld Season 3, yeah, that would be the end of the Elseworld series. 2025 would see the release of, The Flash Legacy, this time focusing on Wally West as the new Flash. Suicide Squad, as well as Superboy for the Ironheart equivalent, and a rebooted Legion of Superheroes film. Not sure what would be a good subtitle. Maybe Legion of Superheroes, Heroes of the Future, I guess. And then 2026 would be the year with limited Disney Plus series. I mean, we already have had Question, a revival of the Question series starting Phase 5, so no introduction. We would have gotten Season 2. We would get Season 2 this year, 2026. But 2026 would also see the release of the fourth Batman movie, which I would probably call the Batman 4. Not sure would be a good subtitle for the Batman 4. Maybe the Batman Court of Owls, maybe. As, of course, we would be getting, Justice League. versus the Fatal Five, maybe, or Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths, more likely, and then Infinite Crisis, Justice League Infinite Crisis. Even though Anti-Monitor is meant to serve as the equivalent of Kane. So I guess Crisis on Infinite Earths for Secret Wars, and as for Doomsday, I guess Twilight Hour, maybe? I'm not sure. But what about Part 7? As for Part 7, I have no idea. I don't think a lot changed other than I had considered revealing that Bruce was Terry's father, but I dropped it as I felt it made no sense. It literally did, and any connections to the Raimi Batman films were going to be 0%. As in, this would have been a new Batman altogether who was experienced. Then there was another version where I made the Raimi films fully canon, but I went with semi-canon as I felt it was the better direction. But all in all, not much changed, honestly. Not at all. But that's what could have been for my What If DC Sold the Rights series. It sure was getting a little exhausting. It sure was. But anyways, stay tuned for more videos like these in the foreseeable future. And I will see you all later. Another reason why I'm making this video is because of Supergirl being released, so I thought it was appropriate. But see y'all later.